Hey everyone, I'm Kristen, and for the past 10 years, I have been hunting for genius recipes for Food 52. In this video, you will get to see an elegant way to make the most of your overripe bananas, the best way I have found to get a stubborn cake out of the pan, and how we can appreciate our family recipes while also making them our own. This recipe comes from my mom, Susan, who got it from my Aunt Peggy in the early 1980s. If you are wondering why I am featuring a recipe from within my own family as this week's Genius recipe, it is because we are getting ready to move once again for hopefully the last time for a long while. And so I wanted to turn to the recipes that we really make the most often at home. If you hit like and subscribe, you will get to follow along and get all of the Genius recipes from our new home kitchen. I'm actually really excited because the first thing that we have to do is going to look horrible.
Action.
Okay, when you're making banana bread, you know you have to use the ripest, stinkiest, like most banana-y bananas. And if you're using them while they're still fresh, they're gonna be covered in brown spots. A lot of times I'm making them not from fresh bananas because usually I have like, 2 or 3 bananas on the bunch. They get too ripe too quickly and I throw them in the freezer. And then I make banana bread one day and they look like this. But there's nothing wrong with them and they're perfect for banana bread, but you do have to interact with.
What do you mean there's nothing wrong with them?
There's nothing wrong with them. They are perfect for this. And then it's so convenient because you get to just kind of like squeeze them out. Wait for it, wait for it. There it is. And as you can see, there's a lot of extra liquid that comes from freezing them and then defrosting them. Like their poor cell walls have, the liquid that's inside has frozen and burst some cell walls and like stuff's melting out everywhere. I think in some recipes you might not want that extra liquid, but in this case, I've always usually left it in, and I think it just adds more banana flavor and it doesn't do weird things to the recipe. The recipe is kind of unbreakable, so extra banana liquid, not a problem. Stood it up here for dramatic effect. Here, let me show you what they look like coming straight from the freezer, because I definitely have more. Like sometimes weird stuff like this happens, where it's all like flattened and it has the imprints of other stuff.
But they're fine.
They're fine, they're good. So after the visceral horror and joy that comes from melting out all of this banana matter, I get to mash it with a potato masher, which is really easy to do, obviously. It's like all reincorporated. All that liquid is now in this creamy banana puree. It's gonna make the banana bread really moist and squidgy and banana-y and perfect. So this part is where I deviate a little bit from my mom's recipe, and I'll explain why. The recipe my mom has always used, it originally called for shortening that gets creamed, so whipped up, good and fluffy with sugar. I use butter because it's what I have. Times have changed, shortening is not as popular anymore. I like the flavor of butter, but I don't want to wait for it to be soft enough to cream, so I melt it. The recipe can take it, it's really good. So I just pour my melted butter in. If it's still a little bit hot, that's okay. Even though eggs are about to go in too, I just, sometimes that's even a good reason to leave the frozen banana a little bit frozen because it'll help cool down the butter. Mix that in. Oh yeah, dump my sugar in. This is another place where I have deviated just slightly from my mom. I just decrease the sugar a tiny bit by like 50 grams. If you want a banana bread that's less sweet, you can decrease it more. If you want a banana bread that is just like super delicious and pretty sweet, just use my mom's original recipe and it's perfect. 4 eggs go in. I don't change that from my mom's version. Basically, I don't really change anything else from my mom's version, but I do want to point out that in the version of this recipe that I have, and in this recipe, which I hope that we can show in the video here, you see my mom's original handwritten version, and then there's a column for my dad's version, which was made in the early 80s, height of, fear of cholesterol, and so everything about my dad's version is lighter and healthier, what the perception of healthier and lighter was at that time.
Watch me spike my cholesterol.
Yeah. Still, just using the potato masher to beat these in. I don't imagine this is how my mom did it because she was creaming the shortening. So this is sort of my innovation, just mashing all the way through. Okay, we have all our wet stuff. Dry stuff is just flour. You could riff and do kind of a combo of all-purpose flour and a whole grain flour. I've done that before. Today I'm just using all-purpose. A little bit of salt and 2 teaspoons of baking soda. Oops.
Plus whatever.
Made it. And it's supposed to be sifted, but I'm just gonna whisk it because that's what I do in my version. And here, sometimes I still keep the masher going just because it seems fun, but it does get a little globbier, so I might switch to the silicone spatula instead. Okay, so dry ingredients. I like this as just a straight up banana bread, but I know banana bread is very, very personal, and for me, I like to break up the banana with either walnuts or chocolate or both. My parents are not with me on the chocolate, I found out. So while I have written about so many different banana breads over the years in the Genius Recipes cookbooks and even on the site, and I do make them and I do love them all for different reasons, this is the one that I actually make most often for a few reasons. I think partly it's because it just tastes right to me because it's the one that I grew up with. And also it's the one that I felt freest to kind of push and pull and do all kinds of things with, like melting the butter instead of creaming shortening, and tweaking the flours and the sugars and the mix-ins and all of that. And I think that those are kind of key to having a recipe that you make all the time. You need to be able to make it fit into your life. And in this case, whenever I have a backup of bananas in the freezer, this is the one that I can bust out with just a potato masher and I don't have to wait for anything. Here's where I'm going to pour in chocolate chips. Even though my mom and dad are not fans of chocolate in this banana bread, that is one thing I love about this recipe, how much you can push and pull and swap and do different things and make it your own. This also happens to be the version that I made for my daughter's first birthday cake. And as the recipe card says, it looks like maybe the first time I had this was when I was a little bit over 1-2, based on the date on the recipe card. Banana bread batter. This recipe makes enough for 2 loaf pans. I don't have 2 loaf pans, so I always do 1 loaf and 1 whatever shape I have. So this is an 8x8. The recipe doesn't say to butter the pans, but I always do. I actually don't know if it's necessary, but I always have the wrappers from the 2 sticks of butter so that it's like, you know, it looks like about the right amount to fill up a loaf pan. It rises a lot, so you probably don't want to go more than like 2/3 full.
It's a cooking show.
I mean, you could weigh the amount that's going in here and here, and I could give you rough times, but no matter what with any cake or any quick bread, it's gonna vary depending on what kind of pan you're using, your oven, all that. So I just eyeball it, and I know that this one usually takes longer than this one because it's more stacked and denser. So this one usually comes out like, I don't know, after 25 minutes, 20 minutes? Just check it early. This is not the kind of recipe that's gonna deflate if you open the oven. Oh, a lot of times I do sprinkle some crunchy sugar on top. It's the sugar in the raw. You know those packets of sugar in the raw? This is that. What you need to know about this is that it doesn't dissolve into the batter. It stays crunchy and like crackly on top and sweet and makes a good crust. And in the shallower one, you get even more of it. Okay, these are going in the oven at 350. They will take different amounts of time and I will watch them. So we have 2 baked banana breads, cooled enough to eject from their pans. So I wanted to show you how I unmold with a sturdy cake like this if it's sticking. But I kind of like jimmy it off a little bit and look, you can see it releasing. I love seeing that in the bottom of a glass pan. Also, sometimes I just leave these in the loaf pan and the cake pan and we eat out of that all week. Oh, how's that look? It's got the good crust. It's got the good squidginess in the middle. Got the little chocolate pockets. Oh, wow. Ooh, chocolate pockets.
Your parents are gonna flip. They'll lose their minds. And No battery?
I'm really excited to eat this because I made it exactly the way I like it. It is all about that sugary, crusty top, that like heavy, almost molten banana-y middle, and then the pockets of chocolate, if that's your sort of thing. I also like to sometimes chop up dark chocolate instead of doing chocolate chips. That is also very good. And this is actually the very last video we are going to be shooting in this kitchen. So goodbye, kitchen, thank you. I'm really looking forward to making the next kitchen feel like home. I'll see you then in 2 weeks.